March 1899, Volume 2. The world has reduced itself to such a sad state because it has lost subordination to leaders, God being the first. This morning, Jesus transported me outside of myself and showed me many people all in discord. Oh, how much this grieved Jesus. In seeing him suffer very much, I prayed him to pour it into me. But since he still continues in wanting to chastise the world, Jesus did not want to pour it into me. However, after I prayed him and prayed him, to make me content, he poured a little bit. Then, being a little relieved, he told me, the reason why the world has reduced itself to such a sad state is that it has lost subordination to leaders. And since the first leader is God, against whom they have rebelled, it happened as a consequence that they have lost any subjection to and dependence on the church, the laws, and all the others who are said to be leaders. Ah, my daughter, what will happen to so many members infected by this bad example of the very ones who are said to be the leaders, that is, superiors, parents, and many others? Ah, they will reach such a point that neither parents, nor brothers, nor kings, nor princes will be recognized any more. These members will be like many vipers that will poison one another. Therefore, see how necessary chastisements are in these times, and how necessary it is for death to almost destroy this sort of people, so that the few who will be left may learn at the expense of others to be humble and obedient. So let me do not want to oppose my chastising the people. End of the reading. The 20th of March, 1900, Volume 3. Jesus is forced to chastise, and the victim soul tries to placate him. Having received communion, I saw my sweet Jesus inviting me to go out with him, on the condition, however, that if I was to go with him, wherever I would see that Jesus was forced to send chastisements because of sins, I should not oppose him, so that he would not send them. With this condition we went out, going round the earth. At first I began to see areas not too far from us, which were all withered, especially at certain points. So turning to him, I said, Lord, how can these poor people go on if they lack the food to nourish themselves? Oh, please, you can do anything. Just as you made it wither, make it become green again. And since he had the crown of thorns, I stretched out my hand, telling him, My good, what have these people done to you? Did they perhaps put this crown of thorns on you? Well, then, give it to me, so you will be placated. I will give them food so as not to let them perish. And removing it from him, I pressed it onto my head. While I was doing this, Jesus told me, It shows that I cannot take you with me, because taking you and being unable to do anything is the same. And I, Lord, I have not done anything. Forgive me if you know that I've done evil, but oh, please take me with you. And he, Your way of acting binds me everywhere. And I'm not the one who does this. It is you yourself who make me operate in this way, because in being with you, I see that all things are yours. And if I did not care about your things, it seems to me that I would not care about you yourself. Therefore, you must forgive me if I act in this way, because I do it for love of you, and you must not drive me away because of this. So we continued to go around. I did as much as I could not to tell him anything at certain points so that he would not chastise, in order not to give him any occasion to make me withdraw and lose his lovable presence. But where I could not, I would begin to oppose him. We arrived at some place in Italy where they were making a plot which was to cause a great disorder. But I did not understand what it was, because as I began to say, Lord, do not allow this, poor people, how shall they go on? Seeing that I insisted and wanted to prevent him, Jesus told me with authority, withdraw, withdraw. And removing a belt of nails and pins, which he wore sunken inside his flesh, which made him suffer very much, he added, withdraw and take this belt with you, for you will give me great relief. And I, yes, I will put it on myself in your place, but let me be with you. And he, no, withdraw. And he said it with such authority that, unable to resist, in one instant I found myself inside myself, and I was unable to understand what that plot was about. End of the reading. The 20th of March, 1903, Volume 5. Jesus and Saint Joseph console Father in his difficulties. As I was outside of myself, I saw Father all in difficulty with regard to the grace he wants. And once again, Blessed Jesus with Saint Joseph were saying to him, if you get down to work, all your difficulties will disappear and will fall off like fish scales. End of the reading. The 20th of March, 1904, Volume 6. All things take origin from faith. This morning I was feeling all discouraged and embittered because of the loss of my adorable Jesus. And while I was in this state, he let his most sweet voice be heard, saying to me, my daughter, all things take origin from faith. One who is strong in faith is strong in suffering. Faith makes one find God in every place. It makes one see him in every action, touch him in every movement, and every new occasion that presents itself is a new divine revelation that one receives. Therefore remain strong in faith. For if you are strong in it, in all states and circumstances, faith will administer fortitude to you and will make you be always united with God. End of the reading. The 20th of March, 1905, Volume 6. True love and true virtues must have their origin in God. Continuing in my usual state, Blessed Jesus came for just a little and told me, my daughter, the love which does not have its origin in God cannot be called true love, and the virtues themselves which do not have their origin in God are falsified virtues. Indeed, everything which does not have its origin in God can be called neither love nor virtue, but rather apparent light that ends up converting into darkness. Then he added, for example, a confessor who works and sacrifices himself very much for a soul is something holy. It apparently gives of heroism. And yet, if he does so because he has obtained or hopes to obtain something, the origin of his sacrifice is not in God, but in himself and for himself. Therefore, it cannot be called virtue. End of the reading. The 20th of March, 1912, Volume 11. Everything is in giving oneself to Jesus and in doing his will in everything. Finding myself in my usual state, my always adorable Jesus made himself seen as all sorrowful and said to me, my daughter, they do not want to understand that everything is in giving oneself completely to me and in doing my will in everything. Once I have obtained this, I myself keep pushing the souls, telling them, each and every one, my daughter, take this enjoyment, this comfort, this relief, this refreshment, with this difference. If they had taken those permissible pleasures before they were giving themselves to me in everything and doing my will always and in everything, they were human things. But after, they are divine actions. Since they are my things, I no longer feel jealous, and I say to myself, if she takes a legitimate pleasure, she takes it because I want it. If she deals with people about some business, if she legitimately converses, It is because I want it. If I didn't want it, she would be ready to stop. So I put everything at her disposal because all she does is the effect of my will, no longer of her own will. Tell me, my daughter, what have you lacked since you gave yourself completely to me? I gave you my flavours, my pleasures, and all of myself for your contentment. This in the supernatural order, but neither did I let you lack anything in the order of faith, confessors, communions, and the rest. Even more, since you wanted only me, you yourself did not want confessors so often. But I didn't listen to you. I wanted everything in abundance for the one who wanted to deprive herself all for me. Daughter, what pain I feel in my heart in seeing that souls do not want to understand this, even those who are said to be the best. End of the reading. The 20th of March, 1919, Volume 12. The deaths and the pains which the divinity made the humanity of Jesus suffer for each soul were not just an intention, but they were real. Louisa takes part in them. I felt my poor mind immersed in the pains of my lovable Jesus, and since I had been told that it seemed impossible that Jesus could suffer so many deaths and so many pains for each one, as is said above, my Jesus told me, my daughter, my will contains the power of everything. It was enough that my will wanted it for it to happen, and if it were not so, my will would have had a limit in its power, while I am without limits and infinite in all my things. Therefore, whatever I want, I do. Ah, how little I am understood by creatures, and therefore I am not loved. Come into my humanity, and I will let you see and touch with your hand what I have told you. In that moment, I found myself in Jesus, who was inseparable from the divinity and from the eternal volition. By just wanting it, this volition created repeated deaths, innumerable pains, blows without scourges, the sharpest pricks without thorns, with such an ease, just as when, with one fiat, he created billions of stars. It did not take as many fiats for as many created stars. One was enough. Yet not just one star came out to the light, while the others remained in the divine mind or in its intention. Rather, all of them in reality came out, and each one had its own light to adorn our atmosphere. In the same way, it seemed that in the heaven of the most holy humanity of our Lord, with its creative fiat, the divine volition created life and death as many times as it wanted. So, being in Jesus, I found myself at that point when Jesus suffered the scourging from the divine hands. It was enough for the eternal will to want it, and without blows, without lashes, the flesh of the humanity of Jesus fell off in pieces. Deep furrows were formed, but in a harrowing manner, and in his most intimate parts. The obedience of Jesus to that divine volition was such that his humanity melted by itself in such a painful way. For one can say that the scourging which he received from the Jews was the image and the shadow of that which he received from the eternal volition. Then, at the will of the divine volition, his humanity recomposed itself. This happened when he suffered deaths for each creature and all the rest. I took part in these pains of Jesus, and oh, how vividly did I understand that the divine volition can make us die as many times as it wants, and then give us life again. Oh, these are unutterable things, excesses of love, profound mysteries, almost inconceivable to created mind. I felt unable to return to life, to the use of the senses, to the motion, after I suffered these pains. And my blessed Jesus told me, daughter of my will, my volition gave you those pains, and my volition gives back to you life, motion, and everything. I will call you often in my divinity to take part in the many deaths and pains which in reality I suffered for each soul. It is not as some believe that was only in my will, or that I just had the intention of giving life to each one. False, false. They do not know the prodigy, the love and the power of my will. You who have somehow known the reality of the many deaths suffered for all, do not put it in doubt, but love me. Be grateful for all, and be ready when my will calls you. End of the reading. The 30th of March, 1932, Volume 30. 3 necessary conditions in order to obtain the kingdom of the divine will. How all live in the divine will. Different way of living. I was thinking about the divine will and was saying to myself, if our Lord loves so much to make known a will so holy, and he wants it to reign in the midst of creatures, why then does he want them to pray in order to obtain it? Once he wants to, he can give it, even without so much praying. And my sweet Jesus, surprising me, told me, my daughter, to know my divine will is the greatest thing that I can give and that the creature can receive. And its reigning is the confirmation of its great gifts and the carrying out of its will that was known. Therefore, it is necessary to ask for it. By asking for it, she disposes herself. She forms within herself the royal palace in which to receive it. By asking for it, she acquires the love in order to love it. She acquires the qualities of sacrifice that are needed in order to possess it. And as one asks for it, the human will loses its ground. It is debilitated. It loses strength and disposes itself to receive the dominion of the supreme volition. And God, seeing himself prayed, disposes himself to give it. It takes the dispositions of both sides in order for us to give our celestial gifts. How many gifts do we want to give? But because they are not asked for, we retain them within ourselves, waiting to give them when they are asked for. By asking, it is as if commerce were open between creator and creature. If one does not ask, the commerce is closed, and our celestial gifts do not descend in order to put themselves in circulation on the face of the earth. Therefore, the first indispensable necessity in order to obtain the kingdom of the divine will is to ask for it with incessant prayers, because as they pray, so are we reached by little letters, now solicitation, now supplication, now the agreement that they want to make with our will, until the last letter comes of the final accord. Second necessity, more indispensable than the first, in order to obtain this kingdom. It is necessary to know that one can have it. Who can ever think of a good, desire it, love it, if he does not know that he can obtain it? No one. If the ancients had not known that the future Redeemer was to come, no one would have given it a thought, nor prayed, nor hoped for salvation, because the salvation, the sanctity of those times, was fixed, centralized in the future celestial Saviour. Outside of this, there was no good to be hoped for. To know that one can have a good forms the substance, the life, the nourishment of that good in the creature. Here is the reason for the so many knowledges about my will that I have manifested to you, that it may be made known that they can have the kingdom of my will. When it is known that a good can be possessed, arts and industriousness are used, and the means to obtain the intent are employed. The third necessary means is to know that God wants to give this kingdom. This lays the foundations, the sure hope in order to obtain it, and forms the final preparations in order to receive the kingdom of my divine will. When a good is wanted and longed for, to know that the one who can give it already wants to give it can be called the last blow of grace. and final act to obtain what is wanted. In fact, had I not manifested to you that I can give and want to give my divine will as dominating and reigning in the midst of creatures, you would have remained indifferent like everyone else toward a good so great. So your interest, your prayers, have been the effects of and births from what you have known. And I myself, when I came upon earth during the 30 years of my hidden life, it can be said that in appearance I did no good to anyone, nor did a single one know me. I was, yes, in their midst, but unobserved. All the good unfolded between me and the Celestial Father, my Celestial Mother, and dear Saint Joseph, because they knew he who I was. Everybody else, nothing. But when I came out of my hiding place and I openly made myself known, saying that I was truly the promised Messiah, their Redeemer and Saviour, even though by making myself known, I drew upon myself calumnies, persecutions, contradiction, anger, hatred from the Jews, and my very passionate death, with all these evils that rained down upon me like pouring rain, it came to be that I, by making myself known, affirmed who I was in reality. The eternal Word descended from heaven in order to save them. And this is so true that as long as I remained in the house of Nazareth, not knowing who I was, no one told me anything, nor did they slander me or do me any harm. As I revealed myself, all evil swooped down upon me. But this making myself known was necessary. Otherwise, I would have departed back for heaven without accomplishing the purpose for which I had come upon earth. On the other hand, by making myself known, even though I drew so many evils upon myself, in the midst of this chasm of evils, I formed my apostles. I announced the gospel. I performed prodigies, and the knowledge of me instigated my enemies to make me suffer so many pains, to the point of giving me death on the cross. But I obtained my intent, that many would know me in the midst of many who did not want to know me, and the fulfillment of my redemption. I knew that by making myself known, the perfidy and pride of the Jews would do all that to me. But making myself known was necessary, because a person, a good, if it is not known, is not bearer of life or of good. The good, the truth, not known, remain hampered within themselves without fecundity, like many sterile mothers whose offspring ends with them. See then how necessary it is that it can be known that I can give the kingdom of my will and that I want to give it. I can say that it enters the same necessity as that of making known that I was the Son of God who came upon earth. It is yet true that many, in knowing this, will repeat what they did to me when I made myself known as the longed-for Messiah. Calumnies, contradiction, doubts, suspicions, scorns, as indeed they have already done, as soon as the beginning of the printing shows signs of making my divine will known. But this says nothing. It is the good that possesses the strength that wounds evil. And so creatures and hell feel wounded, arm themselves against good, and would want to annihilate good, as well as she or he who wants to make that good known. But in spite of everything that they wanted in the first beginning, having as though suffocated upon its wanting to rise, the knowledge of my will and its wanting to reign, yet it did take its first steps, and what some did not believe, others have believed. The first steps will call for the second, the third, and so forth, although those who will raise contradiction and doubt will not be lacking. But it is of absolute necessity that my divine will, and that I can give it, that I want to give it, be known. These are the conditions without which God cannot give what he wants to give, and the creature cannot receive it. Therefore pray and do not hold yourself back from making my divine will known. Time, circumstances, things, people change. They are not always the same. Therefore, what is not obtained today can be obtained tomorrow. To the confusion, however, of those who have suffocated a good so great, but my will triumph and will have its kingdom upon earth. Then I continued to think about the divine will, and I abandoned all of myself in its divine arms. And my beloved Jesus added, "Good daughter, you must know that my divine will possesses and contains everything within itself. All the joys, all the beauties, everything comes from it. Without dispersing anything, it contains everything within itself. It can be said that it carries everyone and everything within its immense womb of light. So all live in it, with this difference, that one who with all her will wants to live in it and lets herself be subdued by its dominion is as daughter, and as daughter is constituted heiress of the joys and the beauties of the goods of her mother, in such a way that this divine mother is all intent on embellishing, enriching, and make her daughter rejoice, while one who wants to live of human will and does not let herself be subdued by its dominion lives in this holy will, yet lives not as daughter, but like a stranger. And all the joys conferred for the creature into bitterness, riches into poverty, beauties into ugliness. In fact, by living like a stranger, she lives as though apart from the goods that my divine will possesses, and rightly so. She deserves to possess nothing good. Her human will that subdues her gives her what it has: passions, weaknesses, miseries. Nothing escapes my divine will, not even hell. And since they did not live in it in life, living like members detached from it, but always inside, not outside, now in those gloomy prisons, the joys, the happiness, the beatitudes of my divine will convert into pains and into eternal torments. Therefore, the living in my will is not new, as some believe. All live in it, good and bad. If something can be called new, it is the way of living, recognizing it as continuous act of one's life, giving it dominion in all of one's acts. In fact, the living in it is the sanctity of each instant that the creature receives. It can be said that she grows continuously in sanctity, but sanctity fed by my will, raised together with it. So she feels my will as life more than her own life. On the other hand, one who does not live in it, though she is there inside, does not recognize it in each of her acts, and lives as if she lived far away from it and did not receive the continuous act of its life, even though she does receive it. In this way, not the sanctity of living in my will is formed, but at most the sanctity of circumstances. So they remember about my divine will when a need, a sorrow, a cross oppresses them. You hear them exclaim, "The divine will be done." And all the rest of their lives, where was my will? Was it not already with them, contributing to all their acts? It was there, but they did not recognize it. It happens as to a mother who lives in her palace and who has given birth to many children. Some of them remain always around the mother, who instills in the children her noble manners, nourishes them with delicate and good foods, dresses them with decent clothes, entrusts to them her secrets, and makes them heirs of her good. It can be said that the mother lives in the children, and the children in the mother. They make each other happy and love each other with inseparable love. The other children live in their mother's palace, but are not always around her. They find pleasure in living in rooms far off from that of the mother. Therefore, they do not learn her noble manners. They do not dress with decency. The foods that they take do them more harm than good. And if sometimes they go to their mother, it is not out of love, but out of need. Hence the great difference between these two kinds of children. But in spite of this, both the first and the second live in the palace of the mother. So it is. All live in my will, but only one who wants to live in it lives as a son with his mother. All others, even though they live in it, don't even know it. Others live like strangers, others know it to offend it. End of the reading. The 20th of March, 1938, volume 35. Love devices of the creature who lives in the divine will. Example of a teacher who possesses the sciences but does not find anyone to whom to teach them, or of a rich man who does not find anyone to whom to give his riches. I am in the arms of the fiat. He loves the creature who lives in it so much that it holds her always tightly in its arms, and even more, its love is such that it places her inside its incessant motion. The most tiny distances or the gaps of an instant in which it doesn't feel her within itself, inside of its own life, would be for it the most painful martyrdom of love. In its pain, it would say, "Daughter, don't move away from me, even for one single instant. You would embitter our love, because we feel your life as our own. We would feel our love being torn and tortured. In fact, you must know that the creature who lives in our will lives and breathes within our breathing. And as she breathes, we feel loved and we love her. Her motion moves within ours, living our same life, working with us and speaking with our same word. We feel her circulating within our divine being like the blood that circulates in the veins of the creatures, always repeating, "I love you, I love you." Not yet satisfied, she takes off in flight, wanders through all created things, gathers our love which is spread through the entire creation, and comes to take refuge inside our Supreme Being. She surprises us by bringing us all the love that created things should give us if they had a mind. She always keeps finding new strategies to love us. At other times she goes to her Queen and Mother. She asks her for all her love and surprises us by bringing us redoubled the love of the great lady. Then celebrating, she says, "I bring you the love of my celestial mother to love you." And oh, how happy we feel. It is impossible for us to be without the one who lives in our volition. O divine will, how much love and power you contain for those who live in you. And I felt so amazed that I didn't know what else to say. My beloved Jesus, repeating his short little visit with unspeakable love, told me, "My daughter, born and reborn in our will, you must know that living in our will contains such prodigies and unheard of marvels that the very heavens shake and lower themselves in feeling them. In this creature we can develop our creative work and deposit our love, our delirium, our anxiety, our souls, our will. She will make others understand our supreme majesty and love us with our love. Without this creature, we would find ourselves as a teacher who possesses all the sciences and could give his lessons in all universities and all schools. But alas, we can't even find one pupil to whom to teach his sciences. What a suffering for this teacher, possessing so many sciences and having to keep them unused within himself, without being able to make their value known. Oh, if this creature could only find one pupil who wanted to learn his sciences, he would place him on his knees and keep the pupil with him night and day. He would feel that his science would not die, but live within his pupil, almost as a duplication of his own life. Oh, how much he would love him! He would feel reborn in his pupil. His loneliness would be broken, being loved by the one to whom he gives his lessons. His life would change from bitterness into joys. Such is our Supreme Being. If we don't find someone who lives in our divine will, we are like that teacher. We have nobody to whom to give our lessons. We possess infinite sciences, but we don't have anyone to whom to say a word. because the light of our will is missing that would make him understand what we want to teach him. On the other hand, if the creature lives in our will, we feel our life within her. We can teach her our divine sciences. Even more lives will arise within her. She will understand perfectly our celestial dialect and will love us as we want her to love us. Here is a change in our destiny and hers. Loneliness will no longer exist. Company will be perennial. We will always have something to say and someone who listens. Our eternal plan will turn into joys and feasts because we will have the creature living in our will. When we do not find anyone who lives in our will, it happens to us also as to the one who possesses immense riches, for so many as to feel suffocated by them, and yet he cannot find anyone disposed to receive or to take his goods. Poor him, he is so unhappy among his riches, and suffers a cruel loneliness. There's nobody to love him, respect him, or say to him even one thank you. Rather, it seems that all evade him, because he cannot find one to whom to give his riches, not even one who would take them. Without company, joy dies, and not being able to give to anyone, he feels that his goods, his life, do not live within others. Isolation is the greatest of the bitternesses. Oh, how many times we want to give, but we have nobody to whom to give. Further, by not living in our will, the creature closes all doors, obstructing our entrance. She even puts a distance between us, surrounding herself with miseries, weaknesses, and passions of the ugliest sort. This is why living in our will finds everyone surprised, and we ourselves remain surprised, having to enclose infinity in what is limited, the immensity within the littleness. We have to make such wonders and prodigies that only our love, which rules over our divine being, can move us to the most amazing marvels, to the extent that even the angels and the saints remain surprised and mute in astonishment. End of the reading. There are no more readings today.